To the final session, the infamous careers panel, and we have Sorrel Osborne from Playground XYZ who's moderating. So please come up, and the rest of the panelists, and hopefully we have enough mics. Turn on the mic, simply press the red button underneath, and off you go. Thank you. Just the red button underneath and it will turn on. Just hold it for a second. You've also got Alexa if you want it.
Yeah, maybe.
To life. There we go.
There we go. Okay, well, I was all prepped to come up here and say that we've saved the best to last, but I think we can all agree that Tiffany well and truly knocked that one out of the park, but we're going to come a close second today. And that is because today we're going to talk about the importance of honing fantastic talent across our industry, but specifically in the wonderful AdOps divisions of our organisations. So my name, as JJ mentioned, is Sorrel Osborne. I'm the head of growth at Playground XYZ. I'm also lucky enough to head up the talent and careers working group within the IAB. Stuff that one up. We'll do that again. No, just kidding. And I'm also lucky enough to sit in the tech council for IAB. So really thrilled to be here. I'm going to start us off just by hearing if I can get our wonderful panel. And sadly, Peter isn't able to join us today. But our wonderful panel, if I get you guys to introduce yourself, and then we'll get started.
Hi, everyone. Adele Visa, the Regional Managing Director at Index Exchange.
Hello all. Deval Velusic, Commercial Director of Carsons.
Hi everyone, Nina Van Eck. I'm Country Manager for the Publisher Partnerships organisation at Google. That's the sell-side monetization. So excited to be here.
Great, and thank you all for joining us today. So basically we want to talk about talent, the obvious shortage we're facing, and honestly get your notepads out because there's going to be some great tips and tricks and aspirational ideas coming away from our wonderful panel. Ultimately, what we're talking about here is the fact that in the last 12 months, job vacancies across our industry have doubled. They're sitting at about 10%, which is a report that the IAB Australia pulled together. There's a number of things that the IAB is currently doing as part of our talent and careers working group to combat this. One of them is partnering with universities to create micro-credentials. We're currently partnering with Deakin to develop that program. And what that is aiming to do is make sure that when we do have these wonderful grads joining our industry, or maybe not yet thinking about joining our industry, they are getting all the information they need and really starting to fall in love with this beautiful AdOps and broader media industry that we all work in from the get-go, from their university days onwards. You'll also see that the IAB has just launched the inaugural Careers Advertising Week celebration coming up in August. So 500 of the best and brightest will be selected to attend that conference. So very excited to see you all spending time with the next generation of our wonderful talent. So we're going to look at a variety of themes around how we can combat talent shortage. And of course, the very, very first one is looking outside of our comfort zones. So I'm going to ask Nina if we can kick us off. Nina, how important is looking for ways to encourage and support talent to join our industry from outside both the current industry, but also our current regions?
Thanks, Sorrel. Yeah, look, it's hugely important. And I think none of us really know the answer. Google certainly doesn't. I think it's a really important discussion to sort of listen and learn and see what ideas everybody has. The talent crunch is real. We feel it at Google, whether you're a startup. We've seen migration hugely disrupted by COVID. We've seen the internet booming, the job market growing wildly. So how do we deal with this? And I think when we were preparing, we thought, let's try and be as practical as we can with giving real ideas to help. And I think the first kind of idea that I wanted to focus on was thinking about job descriptions and how we write them. I was talking with some of our recruiters at Google, and I was also reflecting on an old friend who worked in the military, and kind of when you sign up for the military, you sign up for years, you sign up for 17 years, and the military look for people with leadership skills, with problem-solving skills, good at stakeholder management, ability to navigate ambiguity. You know, these are all attributes that we probably all aspire to ourselves. And I guess the point is that when we craft job descriptions, we need to try to find ways to cast the net wider and take away the specificity. I can't say that. take out complex technical language and really specific skills that might scare people away. You might find if you tweak a job description to be more about those kinds of attributes, that you'll actually receive more applications and different types of applicants who maybe wouldn't have applied before. So I think that's a practical way to think about, you know, widening the net. And that really means, in a practical sense, that you actually really need to think about training and your onboarding process. So if we're bringing in talent that isn't aware of our products and tech, that's going to be super important in the onboarding process. So take out the things that you know you can train people in and focus more on the attributes of the potential hires. So that was kind of practical idea one. I think the other one around career pathways and really taking this moment to bring in more diversity in our thinking. How can we attract different talent pools that maybe don't that aren't as well represented in our industry? So there's a really great example over the last couple of years where Google partnered with an organisation called Career Trackers, and they specialise in Indigenous internships. It's a non-for-profit, and through that partnership, we've had several Indigenous internships within the organisation, which is obviously really enriching and wonderful. And I think finally, as a group, why are we here? What do we love about what we do? And we need to tell those stories and advocate for the talent that we, you know, that's in this room. And so, I think as a group, we need to find ways to bring and retain talent in the Australian market because of the great people that we have and the stories that we all represent.
Yeah, excellent. And I think on that point, there's a really interesting phenomenon that can happen, well, that often happens when you've got a talent shortage, and that is churn. Churn is obviously a really, really dehumanized way of saying people moving about and finding great and better opportunities elsewhere. So I'm going to strike that from the lexicon, the C word, but we are going to talk about it. We are going to talk about how we need to combat this situation, because it is a hellish cycle for a lot of companies when you have a talent shortage and you've already got short teams, and then you're sort of left working people a little bit harder than you'd like to, and you're working with really lean teams, and gosh, wouldn't it be great to find some people, and then half your team leaves. Really, really awful things to combat. So Adele, how are you guys doing that at Index?
I'm going to make sure that everyone's awake in the room. Can I just get a round of hands up? Who started, like, I guess, exited their schooling and decided that AdOps was the career that they wanted to be in? Yeah. Okay. Same. I did not. I had big ambitions to become a marketer. Flashy and sorry. I was trying to hark back to my university days and like what I wanted to do, and I just had this vision that marketing was like the pinnacle of my career, and I fell into ad operations. I started as a coordinator or a sales coordinator, found that I was a little bit more technical in my abilities, and so moved into ad operations and loved it. Like, I think there was just so much I could learn, and in terms of just working with clients, trafficking campaigns. Like, this was admittedly, a long time ago, where it was, there's an issue with my creative and you had to like hack the tag yourself to make it work.
The good old days.
Yeah. But I think there isn't that natural career path. Like Nina said it perfectly. The career paths that exist in our industries aren't clear. And so we see people moving into some of these, I guess what you call like feeder roles almost, that start as a university grad or an industry entrant, and you start there, you develop your skills, and then you find that you want progression. And what does progression look like? It looks like, oh, I can see the sales team over there doing that. Or actually, and for me personally, I left ad operations because I was dangled a marketing role. It's like, oh yeah, like I've always wanted to do marketing, so I'm going to go over there. Like there wasn't a very clear path for me to follow. And I think we can do a lot more around career pathing in general in the industry. And, we're looking at it deeply at Index. It's something we didn't do very well at the start because we were a startup. And so growth came from business growth. As the business is growing, we're able to add more people in. As we added more people, we need management. And so people grew into management roles. Like that doesn't exist if you're in a mature business. So how do you start to create those pathways for mature businesses and then plot that out, make it clear to staff and, start to build that retention? You'll find that like a lot of people and, I guess all of us sitting in the room crave knowledge. So what is the best way you can invest in your teams to get them to stay and to continue to develop? Training, education, like furthering their knowledge base. Like that's where you're going to get the growth from. I can't say like we've nailed it in our business. Like we're still considered, I guess, a very small and lean team. To your point, we've got open roles that we're struggling to hire. Like
wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Shameless plug. But we're working on it and we want to make it better. We know that we've got this incredible pool of talent in Australia, in the region and globally, and we want to work through how do we retain them. There is always going to be the shiny object that's over here. How do you make them see that the shiny object is you?
I like that. Well, maybe you, not me, but definitely you. I guess on that point, you made a really, really excellent point that AdOps, once upon a time, gosh, my AdOps days where you'd literally be trafficking the static JPEG and thought you were absolutely at the pinnacle, the forefront of advertising, the entire advertising industry. Good times. But it is an increasingly fast-moving, iterative, skilled environment. So we are in a place now where we are constantly, to your point, Adele, working hard to make sure that people are staying on top of all the new trends and all the new measurement and all the new ways that we are combating all that awful fraud we just heard about. So, Deborah, how do we think, or what do you think about that in terms of the sorts of talent challenges that having fast-moving, iterative, lots of different elements coming into the AdOps space, what are the challenges this creates for running teams, motivating teams, and ultimately keeping them at the pointy end of the skill set scale?
I think one thing that our industry does, particularly this part of the industry does a really good job at, is making things complex. And I'm not using that as a
so
as
back to JPEGs is what you're saying?
Yeah. I think what we do in this side of the world is complex but simple at the same time, right? And what we're kind of creating our own problems in many aspects, because we've got a specialized team, and then we create even more specialized capability within those teams. So you start with relatively small bubble, and then you've got a much smaller bubble underneath it. So in an industry that's already lacking, I guess, numbers in people, you kind of we're creating this kind of challenge of getting micro, like we tend to do in segmentation as well. But if you think about it, we do have walls as an industry between the buy side and the supply side. So the buy side does its thing and the supply side does its thing. And I don't think as an industry we do a good enough job of removing those walls. And rather than expecting talent to come from outside of our bubble, finding a much better way to move talent between the different sides of the specialization. And if we can do that successfully, it will actually make everyone a much better expert at what they do. If you understand both sides of the fence, and each of those fences go into more fences, if you can understand it a lot better, ad operations becomes a much broader career path. You don't need to look outside of the ad operations side of the fence and go into sales because you want client-facing interactions or whatever else. It really opens up a much broader world. Now, that is challenging because you kind of have to be a workplace that controls both sides. both the buy side and the supply side. We're fortunate enough to have both buy capabilities as well as managing inventory and managing, I guess, our own supply. And that's one thing as a business we've actually started to do, is to remove those walls and create a single team that manages all of those things. So everything from standard traditional ways of trafficking JPEGs, all the way through managing supply from a programmatic standpoint, as well as managing campaigns, whether that's paid search, or whatever else it might be. They're all transferable skills. And this is where I say we make things very complex. If you look at all of those things, the actual pattern is the same. It's just how you apply it. So I think what I guess is the challenge for our industry as we become more complex and more, I guess, specialized, it's kind of trying to remove some of those things and find the commonalities between them, so that our talent you can retain your talent because you're offering them both depth and breadth in terms of skills and capability that they can provide.
Yeah, wonderful. I think that's really, really great point. So really simplifying how they are working with other members of their team in what will become more and more increasingly complex.
Yeah, I think the other part of that question was about motivating teams as well. And I think that's what's becoming the hardest part of it. I think all of us are moving into a more autonomous way of working, less face-to-face. And there's lack of spontaneous light bulb moments in terms of just stumbling across somebody and having a conversation, and all of a sudden you have this thought. Now everything has to be planned, like you literally have to have a Zoom meeting and expect someone to have a light bulb moment like that. Motivating teams is what's, I think, one of the hardest points, which ultimately leads to issues with retention. If you don't have a team that's motivated and excited about what they're doing, how do you create those moments of spontaneity? I'll follow you on that. That really allows
words
you to,
being thrown around here. Yeah.
I think we all want to have fun again, right? It's like, bring back the joy. Yeah. Sam was my old boss when I was at Yahoo 7, and if there's one way to describe him, it was fun. Work was fun. And yeah, it's like we need to bring it back. It's great to be back in person.
Yeah. There's only so many online cocktail making classes you do by yourself at home on Zoom before it gets just an alcoholic, really, aren't you? Like, to be honest. So on that, actually, now that we're talking about back in person and seeing everyone's wonderful faces here today in person, and then drinks later, we can almost smell the wine being poured. So we'll wrap it up soon. The changing face of work is obviously a theme to address the elephant in the room. We can't possibly have a talent chat without addressing these things. So, Nina, what I would love to hear from you, especially given, I think there was probably a lot of people that would assume Google that certainly is an employer of choice and would have a lot of people very, very keen to work from Google. But more and more people are looking for roles that support different ways of working. Obviously, COVID pushed us all into the work from home stuff. That suits some people, not everyone. But hiring managers really need to rethink how they're structuring these roles to recognise the changing face of work, the fact that we do want different things from roles these days. So what do you think are some of the really key things for hiring managers to consider when they are putting out those new recs and those new roles, or even looking at existing roles and how we are reshaping the roles within our teams, both from a retention and a recruitment perspective?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. The return to office at Google is a hybrid model. We haven't returned officially yet, but some of our colleagues in different countries have actually just gone back this week. I think so the model will be 3 days in the office, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and for most of us, especially partner-facing roles, with a kind of emphasis on in-person collaboration, team bonding, all the magic that happens when you're together. So that's kind of where it's heading for us. I think that it's impossible to not answer this question and not talk about flexible working and part-time working. I wondered if I can ask the room how many people are working part-time. One person? Two.
Do you count, JJ?
And JJ's... How about you've worked part-time in the past? Yeah, a few more. So I think that the pandemic more than ever has just highlighted kind of that intersection between work and home and how it all comes together, and that it's hard, and that we really value environments at work, whether we choose to do it now or in the future, but the organisations that are open to flexible working. And so I think that's super important, that people are thinking of that, hiring managers are thinking of that in the way that they promote roles, available roles. I know myself, I've been at Google 11 years, and Google's seen me through 2 12-month maternity stints. I've taken long service, or not long, I've taken extended leave when I was dealing with a crisis. When my mum was quite sick. I've had 2 stints of working part-time, and I feel very grateful and loyal to an organisation that's helped me navigate through all that and still be here. You know, it's hard, but it can't just be lip service. I think organisations need to not just advertise the role as there as a flexible option, but really think about what's it going to look like once you get in? How are you going to feel like you're thriving? How are you going to feel like you're progressing, not just stagnant? You need to build a community around part-timers. Like, everyone who put your hands up, we should all have a chat in the corner over drinks, because it's a really hard thing to experience when everyone around you is full-time and you're not. So all the processes around how do you actually define a role as a part-time role? How do you judge performance and the track to promotion for part-timers? All needs to be thought about. So I think that's for sure one of them. And I might just keep going. But yeah, I wanted to also add, I think organisations need to adapt to the individual rather than individuals needing to adapt to the organisation. And I'll tell a bit of a personal story. My husband is profoundly deaf. And so for him, working from home and having video calls and subtitles on Google Meet is gold. He loves it. And actually he knows that when he goes back to the office, he's going to be disadvantaged because he's going to miss a lot of the conversation. So he wears hearing aids and lip reads. I think that it's this kind of thing that needs to be thought about, is what are all the individual needs, and how can we best make inclusive environments to ensure that, you know, subtitles should be in the room right now. They could be technically. So how do we accommodate these different types of scenarios that are real?
I think flexibility and part-time, it's a really interesting concept, because in many instances, the flexibility that a lot of businesses are providing now is kind of giving that part-time feel to it. I know when my wife when we had our daughter, it was right in the middle of COVID, and I pretty much spent all my time at home being able to support my wife, but at the same time work full-time, but not on full-time hours. And so I think that the part-time concept kind of needs redefining as well. What does part-time actually mean? Because the days are long gone of BCC timesheet entry points when you start and stop. Like, you work on your terms. And I think the flexibility element provides a lot of benefits, but at the same time, we're navigating new territory in terms of cultural impact, motivating of teams, and many different problems that come with it. Yeah.
Is anyone from the BBC here? About probably 6 to 10 years ago, there were the AdOps managers at the BBC job shared, Olivia and Christine, I think it was. You know, they overlapped on Wednesdays. I always thought, oh, that's so cool. And we need more stories and examples of flexible working, embracing it.
I mean, part-time for me, when I was going through that, was working from home 2 days a week. And I thought that was the biggest flexibility, and I felt that was right. But now you have the option to work from home 5 days a week. And it just a little bit throws out that whole concept of part-time being 3 days a week or so, or whatever it might be. Yeah.
I think to add to that, like, one of the harder things that has come out of this pandemic is we've got so much more flexibility in our work days now. When we start to think about building teams and building our culture of our businesses. Like, how do we navigate that in an offline in-person hybrid environment? It's something that we're sort of working through as a business at Index, because we have for the last 2 years pretty much predominantly been working from home. If we're looking to attract and retain talent, like it would be remiss of me not to acknowledge that there is an absolute element of people in our industry that love people. And so, you want to provide environments and scenarios where they have the ability to interact. I think it'll be interesting to see as we continue down over the next probably 9 months, as businesses slowly start to return and find their rhythms. It was an interesting social experiment for our team. We were the first office that went back to working from an office in January of last year. And we found that the team gravitated towards Thursdays. And Thursdays were the day that everyone started to come into the office. And so it sort of feels like there might be this natural rhythm that will be found in the industry, but navigating that as a business and trying to, you don't want to prescribe it, because you don't want to be, saying, well, you have to be in on Thursday and that doesn't meet people's requirements. You've got to be considerate of that as well. I don't have a key nugget of advice, but I think it's just something to be aware of. There is a lot of younger employees. I'm a mum of 2 kids. And so for me, flexibility is, first and foremost, a massive thing for me. But I also acknowledge that a large part of my team that will come into the business in the next 2 years are going to want to have that connection. It's what breeds the culture of our business, and it's what actually everyone is signing up for. So we'll see how it goes. But I think as hiring managers, and I suspect there's a bunch of you in the room, we have to think about how we find that right blend between building the team and getting them together, having those light bulb moments. And just, ensuring that there is that connectivity and that real social tissue again.
Yeah, the virtual water cooler is pretty bloody boring, isn't it? So you want to try and, how do you emulate that? Yeah. It's awkward. Anyway, I'm mindful of time. JJ, how are we going for time? Can I ask a couple more, or is everyone just super keen to get to the boozer? Or oh, let's ask those. Mine are rubbish. Let's go with those ones. Oh, okay. Yep.
So just some questions around exposing the salaries when you're recruiting, and do you feel like addressing salaries during recruitment is a help or a hindrance? Moving forward.
Okay, so for those of you at home, that is about exposing salaries as part of the recruitment process. And how important it is, or how we think it should be happening in the recruitment process currently. Who wants to dive on that one? Nina?
Why do I get all the hard
Sorry,
questions?
I mean, no. Who would like to answer that one?
Well,
Anyone?
I mean,
okay, Nina,
if anyone came to me and said, could you please refer me into Google, which happens all the time.
You don't say.
So salary is not discussed. It's not discussed right until the end, the process. And I know that's unusual. Yeah. I've obviously worked for other companies. I know that is unusual, but it's not talked about till the last point.
So can I ask a question? Can I just ask on that point then, is that because one, Google's just really confident that they are nailing market, or because really trying to sell a lot of sizzle up front before that conversation is being had? I didn't mean to give you this. No, I'm just curious.
No, I don't think it's sizzle. I think the way that hiring is done, this is what I would say to anyone who asks me, that don't worry, that the question will be asked of what a person is on today, and roles are, the salary is set based on years of experience, or it's to do with your leveling, and so it's always going to be competitive. Yep. You're never going to be disappointed.
Great. You look very keen to answer, Double.
I am, because in most instances, salary is not a secret. It's budgeted for. It's in the system somewhere. The hiring manager knows how much money they have to do it. But the challenge with that is you are starting with I guess you're starting with the return as opposed to I guess the whole package. Right, and what I mean by package, there is a numerical number, but then there's also everything else around that. And the challenge is, I'm fully supportive of transparency from the start. However, for that transparency to be beneficial on both sides, there's a lot of things in our industry that we have to get right. Consistency, benchmarking, proper visibility, understanding the different benchmarks in general. So as much as my aspiration would be is to start off and just show everything, it probably is not going to be the best thing for the candidate or the business that's hiring for it. So, but ultimately it shouldn't be a secret. It shouldn't be something that potentially you wait all the way to the end and then you are disappointed by the potential opportunity. There needs to be some level of transparency so that either side is not wasting their time.
I guess from my experience and from our side, we have the conversation does happen initially as candidates come into the business, but it happens with our talent acquisition team. The salary discussion doesn't it doesn't come into the hiring process because we don't want to influence decisions made throughout the pipeline. And so it creates this interesting dynamic because as you go through, you're assessing the person on true merit, what they're presenting, how they're talking to their skill set and their experience. And then it becomes a question at the end of it around merit.
Super important. Okay. Is there other? Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
So a couple of people have spoken about the people first, adult second, light bulb moments individually. Is a centralized office necessary for innovation? And if working from home to increase human happiness, why move back to an
That was verbose. Okay, so I think the key points, thank you for that question. Racking my memory. So I think the key points are obviously collaboration, how important offices are for them, for those moments. Kind of? Yeah, sweet. So who wants to jump on that one? It's all you, Devil.
So our business has gone to, we refer to it as autonomy to choose. So we've given everybody the option to choose how they want to work. And there's three options. There's an option of working in the office, which is classified as being in the office at least 3 days a week. There's a hybrid option, which is 2 days or less. And then there's everywhere. And I think what we found interesting going through that process is we did the survey twice. So the first time we did the survey, it was an even split between 33, 33, 33. But when we did it again, the results were completely different. And I think what that showed us, as much as people want the choice, they also want the option to change their mind very quickly. Now, how important is in-person collaboration to drive innovation? If you think about it, I mean, we are going from 0 to 100, right? So from being in the office all the time to never being in the office. And that is a problem because we haven't actually found a way to continue the innovative journey. So there needs to be a gradual path towards that. But until we can actually get our mojo back to properly innovate, that is a problem, going from 0 to 100. My personal style, and I get to choose that my work, what my personal style is a hybrid option, is an option where I will be in the office because I love a whiteboard. I always wanted to be a teacher, but at the same time, I want the flexibility, right? So there's a lot of rules and things that need to be ironed out until we can continue being an innovative industry, because we will slow down the innovation because we're trying to figure out a lot of other things. We're not focusing on innovation. We're focusing on ways of working as opposed to innovating.
I think to answer the question, you also need to think about well-being and how exhausted everybody is. That even this morning, I walked downstairs and realised that I might need to sandbag my garden because there was so much water on the lawn. And it's like endless, the stuff that we have to deal with, right, at the moment. And I think that, one good thing about being back in the office and in person, however many days of a week that's going to be, it helps us have better boundaries, more fun, more connection, more belonging, more sense of connection with each other. And I don't think you can put a price on how good that's going to be. It's going to be hard to readjust, but hopefully, yeah, we'll all have better mental health and be able to cope better with all of the stresses that are upon us, and continue to keep coming every day.
Showing up. Just show up. Adele, what do you think?
I think I covered a little bit before in the answer that I provided off the back of the
See above.
Yes. I miss the commute. I don't miss it, but I miss it because it was the one time in the day where I could actually disconnect. When I'm at home, I send my kids off to school and then I jump on the computer and I'm on until I pick them up from school, and then it's dinner, bath, bed, back online. Like to Nina's point, there is absolutely no boundaries. I need to personally work on that to do better and set them myself. Completely will acknowledge that in front of the live stream as well. But I think, as businesses progress through this, and it's been interesting watching it, because we at Index, because we are a global business that has a sales outpost in Australia, have had a more flexible approach for our team here, because we acknowledge that there was always times where the team would need to be on a call in the evening or in the morning to connect with international counterparts. And so for every person that I would onboard, I would say to them, please, I know this is not our standard business approach, but we have flexibility because, you will need to take out of hours calls. So make your own day. And then when pandemic hit, I still so vividly remember this conversation in a town hall where, our CEO was saying, don't worry, we'll be back in office. It'll be fine. Like 5 days a week, we'll all be back there. And it was because like a lot of our engineering team, to Devor's point before around, collaboration and these light bulb moments, like they worked so well together in person. And this pandemic and the 2 years of working from home has been the ultimate stress test. It's like, what processes and procedures do we need to put in place to allow us to continue to drive that innovation and drive that growth in a remote or hybrid remote scenario? I think there's still a lot more work to be done. There are some companies that are doing phenomenal jobs at it. Even little things. My husband works for another tech company, different space, but they have a guideline that says if there is one person that is remote on a VC, even if there are 3 people in the office, those 3 have to take it on a VC in separate rooms, because it's not a fair engagement for the one person that's on the call remotely. And it's like, it's so obvious. Like, we've got a team in Japan, we would have team calls and the Sydney team would be dialed in, sitting around a table, having a chat. And the poor team in Japan is just hearing like mass amounts of noise, but no real, like they didn't have that ability to connect with us the way that we did in person. And so I think we're not quite there yet. It'll still take a lot of time and a lot more refinement, but I think this has been, the 2 years has just been an absolute challenge, but a blessing for a lot of businesses, because it has forced very rapid evolution. I don't know if that actually answers the question, but it was something I was rather passionate
I don't even remember
about,
the question. I thought that was really interesting. Okay, guys. Well, I think we've stolen about 12 minutes of your time. JJ's looking at me very intently. I think he just tapped his watch a little bit. So thanks for everyone's time.